Okay, let me begin with a message which was posted on one of my posts on Facebook today. This is off the back of the Southport incident, which happened yesterday. Police cars burned, mosque had been, ravaged by these animals, windows broken, and the world's just gone mad. So I put a post up about one of these hooligans making a fool of himself, and one person put this comment in that post. You Muslims, she says, you Muslims of the UK need to start standing with the people of the UK and saying no to radicalized immigrants. It's not a laughing matter, really. Stop defending immigrants because you take it as an attack on Islam, and start talking the truth and saying no more to these depraved criminals flooding our country. Wow. I thought to myself, which one, who in the video looked like the hooligan and a depraved criminal at the time? And there were floods of them, in her words. So there was a lot of toing and froing from this conversation, and it turned out, see, my video clip was about that idiot making even more of an idiot of himself, and she kind of pulls it into this direction. And then it turned out that she had a bee in the bonnet because I mentioned the crown jewels, because he'd injured his crown jewels. And it was an English reference, right? A reference to something English, to which I needed to educate her that obviously these British people use the term crown jewels for their crown jewels, unless it's because I'm a brown man that doesn't sit well with you, upsets you. And then I had to make the point that obviously the jewel in the crown itself was stolen from India. Anyway, back to the conversation. Southport incident. So what do we know so far? I was reading today, earlier on, that the information regarding this particular incident and who this person is who committed these heinous crimes was taken from a news agency, which poses as a news agency, which supposedly uses AI to extract information from UK and the US. And it was made out as though this person was of a certain religion, Muslim, or an immigrant, a refugee off the boat, and that kind of stuff. It turns out that wasn't true, but it was too late. It turns out this particular individual, this 17-year-old lad, who the police haven't mentioned, his name even, some say he was from Rwanda. Some say in fact, The Guardian, I think it was, mentioned that he was from Lancaster or Lancashire and originally from Cardiff. We still don't know who this person is. But let's just say he was Muslim. Would that make it okay? Now, these guys have got muck on their face for having responded in the way that they did. What do you make of this, Barry?
I think what really saddens me is the hatred that's been built. And I think a lot of that is irresponsible media, politician statements, the hatred that's been built towards immigration into this country, and even against Muslims. I think the whole Islamophobia, the negativity, and a lot of that, it's all lies and it's not true.
I think there's obviously the incident that happened with the children, Alice, Ellis, Bieber, the 3 girls have died. You know, it is a tragedy. But what makes it even more tragic, and I think the people of Southport in that community, they were quite alarmed at the riot that took place and the targeting of the masjid. The chairman of the mosque, elderly man, he was locked inside the mosque effectively, and he apparently got out at midnight. And he goes, "It's one of the most terrible experiences I've experienced in my whole life." So when you've got to that level of hatred, and I knew something was going to happen during the day when I went onto social media, and they named social media without a reference, a name Ali al-Shakatari or something like this, and he was from Palestine, Jordan, apparently on this few posts that were going viral, migrant, on the boat he came last year, and he's a Muslim. and you're thinking, hang on, this is enemy number one.
Yeah,
The way
everything that the West has been fighting against for the
Yeah.
last
Yeah.
however long.
But I think there's a wider point in all of this. Migration has been in crisis for over 10 years in the whole of Europe, not just England. At the beginning of this year, similar riots took place in Ireland, actually, and over the for housing of migrants in a hotel, etc. And it seems like there's absolute no sincerity in dealing with this issue. They rather leave migrants in refugee camps on the Turkish border, in the Greek area. They let them kind of drown in the Mediterranean. Apparently, this year alone, there's been over 5,000 migrants have died from West Africa trying to get to Europe. So when you look at it, you think, where's the sincerity in dealing with this issue of migration?
Where's the humanity?
Where's the humanity? And then that's one issue. Then the other issue then comes on to every person. I think we've talked about this before, is we're all struggling with all the bills, with work, with looking after families, and life is getting tougher and tougher and tougher. Whether you're black, whether you're white, whether you're Muslim, whether you're Christian, whether you're atheist, everyone across the board in this country is beginning to struggle and feel the pinch. Who is to blame? And it's the poor man on the boat. And that's the unfortunate thing about this. And this is on the backdrop of the announcement that, they blamed Liz Truss for the banking crisis. Mortgages have gone up. Look at how manipulative they are, that £40 billion worth of profit that banking sector made last year, which was up by about 20 to 30% from the year before. So you're thinking, everyone, mortgages has gone up. They're all struggling. On top of that, you're blaming the poor man migrant, but you're happy with that 40 billion.
Yeah, I think one of the other obvious question people aren't asking when it comes to the migrants is the Western world has gone and pillaged a lot of the world's countries. They have successfully committed crimes against majority of the world in the Arab world, in the Southeast Asia. They nick everything they have, they steal their resources, they tell them that they know gooders, and they come back, leave them, get all the resources and all the money, and as soon as somebody from there wants to better life and wants to get away from all the crap that they're left over there, come to this country to get some of it, right? And they're saying, oh no, you can't come here. You can't come here. Look at the double standards here.
It's disgusting because the way that they do it is, the same person who messaged you, for example, you Muslims, right? These are the same kinds of people who will say, oh, but look what the Muslims have done in their own countries. Look at them, those shitholes, as they call them. Like, they've ruined their countries and now they want to come here because it's better for them. We're saying it's not them who ruined it. It's you who've ruined it. You and your allies have ruined these countries, and now you wonder why those countries are in such bad situations, in such bad states. Then you complain, why are they coming over here? But I think coming back to, there's a point that I think a lot of the right wing, or a lot of British people, who've got their heads on their shoulders. I'm talking about British people, anyone who's from here, anyone who's slightly humanitarian. When you look at what's happened in Southport, no doubt it is tragic. These are little kids who died, right? All of us are fathers, right? We feel it. If anyone was to come and try going for any of our children, we'd feel that it's an Islamic ethic imbued within each and every one of us, that whether our own kids or somebody else's kids, anyone who is at risk, la darar wa la dirar, we remove harm from them. We minimize harm from them, right? As much as we possibly can. Do you actually think that whether whoever this 17-year-old was, Muslim, non-Muslim, I couldn't give a damn where he's from, if this dude tried to do what he did in front of actual Muslims, do you think the Muslims would have stood back and let it happen? This is the foolishness, I think, of these people who think, you Muslims would just... No, we wouldn't.
I think we both have touched on a very important point about the Britain is a colonial country. It has this element in it which is deeply and unashamedly, like, they hide it. They don't admit it. They don't talk about it. It's a closet, it's a skeleton in the closet
That everyone knows of.
that everyone knows of. But I think that has built so much distrust in the world, not even to the extent that even the far right that protested yesterday, they were even saying that we don't trust you. Why? Because you're calling it a non-terrorist or terror incident. What happened with Tommy Robinson over the weekend as well, and his backstory as to why he's had to flee England.
Yeah.
And he and that whole crowd believe that there's some sort of deep state that is manipulating everything. And what we're saying is actually, we're saying the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's conspiracy theories on both sides being pushed out, which I think we need to be careful of, because it's what Barry was saying earlier, that, and I think this is a rock solid point. He said they're trying to create, the narrative is there's a far right and there's an extreme Muslim, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, but he's saying because there's a far right and there's an extreme Muslim, we need to, in order to be good British citizens and so on and so forth, just regular humans, we need to remove ourselves and rid ourselves of both parties.
Yes, 100%. And
that's
so
it, yeah.
automatically you have created two boxes of criminals and people or groups of people who the masses are taught to hate.
Yes.
The Muslims and the far right.
And we're easier to identify
And the real criminal gets away with his crimes.
with his
And
40 billion.
that's right. And this
Which
is
is
the point
the
for me,
state,
Majid, that when you look at the hooligans outside of the mosque demonstrating, you think you can't have a civil conversation with these guys.
No, not with them.
But
100%.
my point is, you can't really have an honest and civil conversation in society anymore. Not with the normal people you can, but with the media, with the government. They don't allow that. So I think it's about time now that whether you're Muslim or non-Muslim, you start having some of these honest conversations. That actually, from even when our fathers came into this country, what was it for? They were the early migrants. It was because there was a labour shortage. They contributed to this country. They were good citizens because they had the Islamic values. And even now, there's a massive labour shortage in this country. The immigration isn't just the people who are coming on the boats. You walk into the hospital, what do you see?
Yeah.
You see people who have migrated to these lands. Even now, I know people who've come here just because there's a massive shortage in the care industry. So there is a need for migrants to come in this country, and actually the country would not function without them. There's a different debate whether why is the normal person suffering? And the normal person is suffering. It's absolutely ridiculous to say he's suffering because of the migrants. He's suffering because of the government policies.
Exactly. Yeah. Can you just imagine, just for a moment, entertain me. Can you just imagine what this country would look like with no migrants? Just imagine.
White only.
Yeah.
White English people only. Can you just imagine that?
I think that hits harder. It hits home harder when you or if you take out everything that migrants bring with them. So that's all the spices and the masala. Now
Chicken
you're
tikka
literally
masala.
stuck.
Your
now
national dish has gone out of the window.
Basically, now you're only stuck with a potato. Think of like only a potato.
Yeah, but the migrants came for the potatoes.
But I think the real discussion, like I was saying, guys, was that okay, actually, why is the normal person suffering? You know, there's a massive cost of living crisis out there.
Yeah.
That's not the migrants.
Yeah.
You look at the rich, the elites. We were talking about the bankers earlier on. What happened in COVID? The rich actually, they multiplied their wealth.
Well, if we just think about how those rich multiplied the wealth and how the state made a lot of its generated income, it's through historically pillaging other countries. Right. Even now, if you look at the expenditure of this country, how much it spends on things like armed forces and weapons and selling weapons, even if they're not in the country itself, which is being pillaged, they're contributing to it because their weapons are being sold to countries who are pillaging the other countries, right? That's where they're making a lot of the money from. I had an aspiring MP here who we interviewed a few weeks ago, a couple of months ago, and he was saying the thing. I think he had really good aspirations of improving the quality of life of the local constituents. And I said, where are you going to get the money from? He goes, stop going to war with other countries. We're spending so much money on in these wars and pillaging other countries and getting all these other the resources from other countries, whether it's oil, whether it's gas, or whatever else it is, and appeasing our Western counterparts like the US, following their trends because they're the masters of the UK. We just follow suit, and we've seen that so time and time again with this Palestine and Israel issue. That's where the money is spent and being obtained from, is through immoral means.
And it's an interesting conversation, Majid, like you mentioned, I was having with the black cab driver. He was having a similar discussion. And the one is looking at the wars and one is even historically. And I was saying to him, do you think as a nation, you've taken more out of the foreign, so-called foreign countries, or actually you've given more to immigrants? Actually, the immigration into this country, do you think they contribute more or take out more? You know, this whole thing of scroungers living on benefits. Well, actually, you look at them and they're very hardworking people.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I'm saying is, sadly, it's come to that stage in society now where you can't have an honest, truthful conversation about things. Because this is not just a Muslim issue, guys, by the way.
Yeah.
You look at the average, even non-Muslim.
Yeah.
They're suffering. That's why there's so much anxiety, hatred, and you see people coming on the streets. But actually, you're going for the wrong guys.
Well, we saw
it could be
the
all-
scroungers, didn't we? We saw the scroungers outside the mosque in Southport, didn't we? I mean, that's where the scroungers and most likely people on benefits were. But I think that coming back to the war issue, there is a lot of war, but we've got to remember war sells.
Yeah.
And
It makes
because
money.
it's so profitable, it makes sense that you create wars on different levels. This is what they're
Yes.
doing. They're creating wars even on our streets by saying, no, it's you white people against those brown people. Make sure you've got it down.
Divide
And conquer. And as long as people are fighting their little battles here and there over scraps,
Yeah.
then the rich take everything. They take the buffet.
Yeah,
Yeah,
on the
imagine
point
that-
of what Barry mentioned about the average person who is struggling, I would argue our white counterparts, English Western counterparts, would struggle more in some cases. It could be argued because the family connections and the network of support that we have culturally in our cultures, like the Southeast Asian cultures, whether it's Indians, Pakistanis, Bangladeshis, Malaysians, whatever, is stronger. We have a stronger network of support. Obviously, there are flaws in every system that we have, but there's a stronger desire to support one another, someone who's going through bad times in our culture than there is in the Western culture. This is why you don't see as many Southeast Asian people in care homes. You don't see as many people being taken away, being looked after by somebody outside of the family.
Yeah, we have a lot of very strong filial piety going on. So we do make sure that we take care of our own and we try to maintain that. But then, and I want to bring this back to Islam. I know it's not an Islamic, like anyone with half a brain cell knows the Southport issue isn't an Islamic issue.
Of course.
However, the only ones who are lacking that half a brain cell, the far right, they genuinely do think that it's an Islamic issue.
Yeah.
And I remember there was someone who once said, they go, non-Muslims, and they go, we're going to a Vaisakhi Mela. And I go, okay, fine, you guys do you. And they go, but my mom was worried. I go, about what? I said, what if some Muslim comes and tries blowing up? And I go, right. And you're telling me why? And they go, just in case you've heard of anything. I go, oh, so you think that we're in a 1.8 billion people WhatsApp group? You know, I go, just send me a picture of what you and your mom look like right now, and I'll tell everyone you guys are off limits. How dumb are you? Come on, like, but there's people out there like that. They genuinely,
they do.
this is a fear, and I think, what are you scared of?
And I think, Majid, one point that I think we have to be careful not to fall into that trap that we make it us and them issue, a Muslim and a
No, it's
non-Muslim.
true.
So, for example, anyone living in our community, why do you do humanity nights? It's not to feed the Muslims. We know Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, if your neighbor goes hungry while your belly's full,
Yeah.
then this is the
Well,
problem.
99% of our service users at Humanity Unites, the homeless feeding
that's
that you're
not
referring to, are our
That's right.
non-Muslim white counterparts,
That's right.
our community.
That's right. So, and my point then is that, so that's our outlook. So whoever needs help, as
Yeah.
Muslims, we would help them.
Yeah.
This is look at the life of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, this is what they did. But now the problem is, the real question debates I'm talking about is, why would a nurse in a full-time job, professionals, use a food bank?
Yeah.
The cost of living crisis, why is this a problem? And now that's what I'm saying, that the government, the media don't want us to have this real discussion. Well, actually, why is there such an economical crisis? It's not the migrants.
Yeah.
It's
There's a few points just to kind of just listen to everyone. There's like a fake debate that's been happening for a long time in the political discourse: multiculturalism versus assimilation. And the reason why I say it's fake is because it kind of polarizes the whole thing.
yeah.
And this is what we're talking about. That hang on, they're going far right, and then these guys are, extreme Islamists and what have you, and therefore we then buy into the notion that there's extremists in both camp. Therefore, we need to moderate and kind of have a melting pot theory within society, and then that's how we get on. If we park that kind of theory or that discussion, political discussion to a side, and then just let's have a look at the crisis after crisis after crisis in the Western world, particularly in England. How many have been solved? Right? And the answer is a big fat zero. Now, when you've got that situation where nothing seems to be working, people have been striking non-stop, right?
Yeah.
And they're trying to settle them. Now these things are turning into riots. France has been rioting for a number of years, actually, before us. So there's something going on here. Now the Muslim mindset, the way I'm looking at it is, if we get trapped in that political debate that I'm saying to park to a side, then we're buggered. Then this is going to be carrying on for a long time. But if we say to us that the political elite, the political ideology, whatever philosophy they're following, they're not coming out with answers. We need to work this out ourselves. And with Pete up the road, let's try and work out these solutions. Let's come to the answers. Let's come to a worldview. Let's come to some sort of solution. And let's get whatever, because this issue of children dying, 3 children died, it hurt,
Yeah.
right? Palestine, we've been living with 15,000
Yeah.
plus children dying.
Yeah.
So we know what it feels like. Come on, let's talk.
Yeah.
That's it.
And I think that's where we need to get
And
to.
even
We need
what,
to get to.
and the point, Bobby, you're right there. And look at it, these shootings is not just because the immigrants are coming to this country. Murder on the streets.
Yes.
You look what
crime.
goes on, knife crime in London. You look at what's been going on in America for centuries now. People walking into school, youth, and just shooting everyone. Why is society come at a place where there's no care for human life anymore?
Yeah.
And you'll see that doesn't come from the values of Islam, because that teaches the opposite.
Yeah.
It comes from a culture that breeds selfishness, don't care about anyone else, don't care about the damage it's going to cause in society. And that's definitely the opposite to Islam.
It's definitely the opposite to Islam, and it's definitely opposite to human nature.
That's right.
Because human nature, we as human beings are naturally designed to protect ourselves. And that in some ways also means getting along with your neighbors and people who don't even look like you or speak like you, although you may be wary of them. On this final note, we're going to close this conversation here. Just on this final note, my appeal to the general community is, guys, just think for yourself. Just think for yourself and don't fall into this trap of the politicians. The politicians are there to divide us and there to win your votes so that they can be voted in by you because they want to be seen or perceived as your saviors. Up till now, how many politicians and how many times have you seen these issues like Bobby mentioned being resolved? None. Because they never get resolved. They're designed by their inception to continue and to be dragged out until no end. There's no end to these issues. The issues are only going to be resolved by you and me, us, people who live in the real world, people who live in these communities. So the time when we start to bicker and fight with each other, they win, the people who want to stay in power. And we're letting that happen. we as a community need to unite. And this is why one of the reasons why we named our organization Humanity Unites, where we do the soup kitchen, because the aim is to unite. The aim is to keep a unity within our community. On that note, have a good one, and we'll see you in the next one. Take care.